Hey, welcome. We're back. We're in Saratoga. We're at the Saratoga Springs Horse Show, and we're glad to have you back and join us. We got a lot of things to talk about in this segment. As you can see, the jumper ring is behind us. I'm Wayne Williams, co-host along with
Susan Kane. Thank you for tuning in this afternoon. It's a pleasure to have you join us and spend time with you at the Saratoga Springs Horse Show.
And once again, we can report that there is a little bit of drizzle and rain.
Yes.
So nothing new so far this week, but the weather's not bad. It's not nearly as cold, and it's there's a lot of people on the grounds, and activity level is high. And of course, we have the very special class this afternoon, the $25,000.
We do. We
class.
have 15 entrants, mostly professionals. Robert Lee is an amateur who's going with 2 horses, and we have 13-year-old Michaela Langmeyer. So it should be quite a contest, quite a lineup of horses, all jumping their highest to this point in the show for the most prize money. So we're looking forward to the Saratoga Cup. It will not start before 3 o'clock, and it is preceded by one class that might be more important, and that is the lead line class.
Oh, yes. Yeah. That's the time that we take all of our wonderful kids who are the future of the horse industry.
Yes.
And bring them out there and let them all have their shining moment as a lead liner. Hey, don't forget, it is the Saratoga Springs Horse Show. It is run by and for the benefit of the Capital Fund of Saratoga. And the Capital Fund supports a great number of charities. And those charities are, we will run them down through the course of this 2 hours, but soup kitchens and rescues, and like the Franklin Community Center, also 18 different food pantries. So all of the money generated from this Saratoga Springs Horse Show through the Capital Fund, the proceeds can go back into the area in all of these helpful ways. You may also donate and help us. And you will see moving across your screen, I don't know if it's moving this way or this way, but one direction or the other, you will see moving across the screen ways that you can donate. One, you can do it very securely by texting. Text the word Saratoga and do that to 50155. Make a secure donation. You may also call our operator for a telephone donation, 518-306-5121. Or we do have a kiosk here. It's in our exhibitor tent. You can go in there and make a very secure donation via the kiosk. We would appreciate it. So would all of the charities here in the area. Susan, we have a guest.
We do have a guest, HorseWorks Insurance Specialist. Would you kindly introduce yourself to our viewers?
I'm Brendan Tatro. I am from Vermont. We have our office in Colchester. We've been in business for about 3 years here. I think it was 2011. And this is our first year sponsoring or co-sponsoring the horse show. We're doing the NAL Adult Jumper Classic today and next week as well. And I personally remember showing here as a kid, and I really liked it. And it was just a fantastic event. It's a great town. And as a small business, we're really careful about where we allocate our advertising dollars, and seeing that this is such a great horse show and the fact that it's a charity organization as well, really, it said a lot in terms of where we were going to, or helping us make the decision, I should say, to sponsor the horse show. Yeah.
That's a challenging decision to make. There's so much
it is. It was really
vying
tough.
for customers' minds
Very
and
much.
times.
Yes.
And did you spearhead the sponsorship here for your company since you had shown here as a youngster?
Well, we actually were trying to tackle a budget. I think it was like last fall for this, 2014 fiscal year, and we literally just sat down and figured, okay, well, regionally, where are the horse shows? Where can we try to get the most exposure? And we tried some of the bigger shows, some of the bigger organizations, but I think I've always tried to run our business very personally, and we like to have a very close connection and interaction with our customers. And I wanted to also be able to advertise with the shows and the organizations that have that nice community feel that aren't just the big, as I like to call them, Walmart shows and organizations that maybe don't necessarily appreciate your dollars as much as or an organization or like the Saratoga Springs Horse Show would. And again, especially the fact that it it's going to charity, I think really means an awful lot.
You know, it's Saratoga. It's a 55-year continually running show. You've shown here.
Yes.
So it's the prestige of the area, and it helps charity. So it covers every base that you want to cover.
For sure, and I think really to go a little bit beyond that, it's a great town. It's a really great town. I mean, I play polo. I'm an amateur, believe me, but you know, I come up here and we do play in Saratoga, and I always look forward to coming here. And it's just, you know, it's a great vibe. It's a great feel. Where we are in Vermont, you know, we're really close to Burlington, and I've always told people, you know, the biggest reason that I like Saratoga is it gives me that Burlington feel, and it's just, there's great restaurants, great things to do, and then the horse community, I think, really complements that. Yes.
Tell us a little bit about HorseWorks, what you do, what you offer horse
Yeah,
owners, farm owners.
Yes, we specialize in mortality and medical for the vast majority of our clientele base is the performance horses, show horses, mainly hunter jumpers, but we do have some of the varying disciplines, you know, really across the board. But we also have products anywhere from personal and commercial liability to homes and farms. We write any insurance that has an equine exposure, and again, we write through very great carriers that have, you know, wonderful products that really make our jobs easier and treat our clients very well. And we're very proud to actually be. We're not just sponsoring the horse show. We also went in with one of our carriers, Starnet Insurance Company, and their reps will be here next week to take it in for the first time on their end. But you know, they were very generous in allocating some money to help us, you know, sponsor the horse show, and yeah, so we pretty much do it across the board. Yeah.
So let me ask you this question: when you're helping somebody write insurance, you said mainly it's health or mortality, right?
Yes.
What's probably one of the key points that you see a lot of people making mistakes on when they're writing their insurance? What area are they most lax on that you say they need to pick up that they don't see?
Yeah, I think especially when it comes to the horses themselves, you know, they're athletes, and I think a lot of people don't necessarily insure to value. If you bought for instance, if we're talking strictly about the horses, if you bought a show horse, you know, 4 years ago for X, you know, you've put in more money in terms of doing the showing and the training and the upkeep. It's value added, and a lot of people don't, you know, increase their animals' values accordingly because it's just something that I think a lot of people just don't think to do. And you know, if you have, my job really is to make our clients think worst case scenario. What are you going to do if you have a loss? Are you going to be able to recoup your investment? Well, it's not just your initial investment; it's everything that you to that animal from the time you initially purchased them or obtained them to the time when you had the loss. And like I said, unfortunately, I think a lot of people don't insure to value, and unfortunately, they find out the hard way when they do have a loss that, oh God, you know, I spent $30,000 on this horse or $50,000, but I've really put in, you know, close to that amount of money in, you know, 3, 4, 5 years in showing and training, and I can't get that back because I wasn't keeping, you know, my animal insured to the correct value, essentially.
Yeah. Also, when you talk about that value, as you train a horse and you win or perform with a horse, that value does go up.
Correct.
Just as far as the fact that you have brought that horse along.
Yes.
So yeah.
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 And I think also as well, you know, the fact that when it comes to the liability end for specifically for trainers and professionals, I think a lot of professionals assume that they have what they need, and you know, when we do account audits, when you know, clients send us existing policies just to take a look at, you know, I always tell them, I can be your best friend. I'm going to give you 2 great answers. I'm going to give you either you're in a really good position right now, or you're not, and we can fix it. And so, you know, we always look good on that end. But I think a lot of professionals just automatically assume that they have what they need, and a lot of times, from what, you know, our audits and again of accounts, that's not necessarily the case. Not all the time, but a fair amount.
Well, it's always a tough, you know, I think insurance is one of those things too, correct me if I'm wrong, that people look at and they know they got to do it,
Yeah.
but they just never get around to sitting down and really doing it,
Very
right?
true. Very true.
So how do you work around that? How do you entice them out to make sure they get the proper coverage?
That's a really good question. You know, a lot of our business is done through referrals, but you know, a lot of our clients are satisfied clients, and inevitably the conversation comes up at some point in time. You know, especially I always say, you know, our best advocates are the people that have unfortunately experienced losses, and they're the ones that are really going to, you know, to really push the whole insurance subject. And I think, you know, a lot of people just, again, when you're going through the daily motions of life, and again, dealing with horses, it's a 24-hour day, 7-day a week, 365-day a year job, and unfortunately, sometimes we get pushed to the bottom of the list. And you know, just reminding people, I think keeping a presence, you know, being available, being readily available on the weekends, even. You know, we don't. I've got my phone on me all the time. We have a 1-800 number, but I've got my cell phone, and I always tell people, you know, if you have an issue, call me, because I want you to know that we're around when, you know, after hours. We don't shut the door at 5 and close shop. You know, we're available literally 24 hours a day if you have an issue. And so we try to be accessible. Try to be accessible to people as much as possible.
Are you still showing?
I play polo now.
You said polo.
Yeah, no, I did show for a long time, but I kind of got burnt out and started playing polo.
So how do you like polo?
Oh, I love it. It's really fun. We joke. I'm also the president of Sugarbush Polo Club up in Vermont, in Burlington, and we joke around. We call it blue collar polo, but it's just a bunch of guys and gals that, you know, we all have day jobs, but we do it for the love of mainly for the love of the game and the love of the horses. And you know, I work, again, the vast majority of our clientele base with Horseworks is the hunter jumper, the show people, the dressage people, and the polo and, you know, avenue that I enjoy, you know, that I do on the side. It allows me to enjoy horses kind of away from work. It allows a separation.
But it's a polo, and I'm not well versed on polo, but I was forced into calling a match one time.
Really?
Yeah. And I said, as long as the person that was sitting beside me could tell me what the penalties were when they were called, I was fine.
Yeah.
And it was in Colorado, and the University of Colorado team played the University of Kentucky.
Oh, really?
The Kentucky team members flew in and borrowed horses. Just so they could do it was an exhibition.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was a lot of fun, and it's a whole new skill set.
It is. The first polo lesson I ever took was probably 6 years ago, and it was at Newport Polo Club in Portsmouth, Rhode Island. And I remember I got on, and I can't remember his name, but the instructor that I had, I think I showed up in breeches and boots and like a GPA helmet. But the instructor I had, he kind of looked at me really funny. But he said to me, I know you hunter jumper people. He's like, you need to forget everything that you know and listen to what I'm telling you, because you have a lot of preconceived notions that just aren't going to work in this.
Right.
And I tried to do it my way for a while, and then I realized, he's right. So, yeah, it's really fun, and like I said, it allows me a little bit of a release. It allows me to enjoy the horses from a different perspective, and I can do business. You know, it's good because I do a lot of business on the polo field, surprisingly.
But it's those polo ponies are really, you know, they have to have a different sort of bravery, because you're putting them in some much different situations.
That's very true. I remember the first time I ever groomed a polo pony. My friend Justin had, you know, he was trying to get me into it, and I went out to the farm with him, and he's like, you know, get that horse over there ready. I don't even remember her name. And I pulled her out, and I started doing the show horse groom, as I call it. I'm currying, and I'm like, okay, where's, you know, the shedding blade? And he looked at me, and he's like, we've got 10 more of these to do. You know, take it easy. But you know, just from that end of it, and they're really good souls. You can do pretty much anything to them, and they just kind of go with the flow. And I kind of like them because they're very low key, low maintenance, but they'll give you everything that they have. They really will.
And on the same token, nobody is going to detract from your score due to lack of certain grooming, right?
That is true, yes. That's appearance is only a minimal issue. A minimal issue, yes.
It's an interesting field with the insurance part of it. It really is.
Yeah, no, it is. It's I never would have thought in a million years that I would ever be doing what I'm doing now. And you know, it's great. I really do appreciate. You know, I think the one thing that I really, you know, try to emphasize that are trying to find a career within the horse business is that I'm very lucky because I am able to, as I say, I've got a real job that involves horses.
Well, you know, that's something too that I've always been thankful for, and I think Susan has as well. When your real job is something that you truly love, then you don't go to work.
No, you really
you don't go to work a day in your life, and that is a lot of people never obtain that ability, and I'm lucky, and I'm glad to hear you say that, because if you love what you're doing.
Yeah, you know, it's good. I mean, I think like any other job, you know, we have our we have our rough days, you know, here and there, but you know, at the end of the day, when you know, if we have had a busy day or a difficult day, you know, it's funny, I can sit back in my chair in our office and, you know, have kind of just a moment to myself, and I think, wow, this is rough, but then I kind of have just a moment of reflection where you just go, wow, you know, it might have been a pretty rough day, but I really like this. You know, I don't mind dealing with this kind of thing.
What's that old saying? It says a bad day around horses is still better than any other day.
It really is. It really is. It's they kind of bring a peace and an understanding to life. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine in Aiken a couple weeks ago when I was there, and you know, made a really good point. You know, she said to me that, you know, this is our life. You know, even though that we work in the business, it's a lifestyle, and I've heard it before, but it didn't really sink in. And you know, we do it because we really like it, but it really is. It engulfs every part of our life, and it is a lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And you really have to enjoy it.
It's, you know, and the true mark is if you do all your Christmas shopping at the tack and feed store, then you know
it's true.
Yes,
you know
yes,
that
indeed.
you know it's true, right?
Oh yeah, there's a lot.
So that's really great.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well, thank
I have
you.
a few insurance questions I'd like to get
absolutely.
answered. With regard to the added value of the horses, how do you or an underwriter, or how is a premium calculated when the actual value of the horse is probably depreciating as your investment in expenses for maintaining that horse are staying the same or increasing year after year? Often, in my own experiences, when making a mortality claim, it's always been on the value of that horse at that time, not taking into account my investment in it. That's a really significant factor to consider. Can you explain that a little more so
It kind
we can
of
understand that?
it brings us back to I think the original question that you guys asked me about, you know, the values of animals and calculating values, and like I said, I think one of the biggest problems that a lot of our clients face is they don't keep the animals insured to value. And what we do every time that we send out renewal forms, really each month, to clients that have policies that are coming up for renewal, we always send them a justification of value form, which again allows you to essentially input any shows that you went to, any results. The USCF website is a lifesaver for us because we're able to download show records on animals that again serve as justification of value, and any training and expenses that you put into your animals, again, lessons, clinics, instruction, all the expenses that go along with those, you know, specific, you know, things that you're doing with your horses. You know, I think the really important thing that I try to get across to people too is just to keep accurate records of what you're doing. I mean, you don't have to be completely precise, but just have a good idea of what you're doing, so when it comes time to, you know, to renew your insurance, you're keeping your animal insured to their proper value. And if you have, again, worst case scenario, if you have a medical, or I should say a mortality claim, and God forbid your horse dies or has to be euthanized, you've got, you know, a bona fide record of what your animal has done, so there's no discrepancies in what the value of that animal is at the time of the claim.
And an underwriter views that
Yes.
as one package as
Yes.
a value.
And that's what we always try to do at the inception of insurance policies, is make sure that if you say your animal's worth X amount of dollars, that number is essentially, again, verified, so to speak.
That's a really important,
Very important.
matter to present. I've had horses for 3 decades and many insured over that time, but never had anyone explain to me the justification of value and the investment in that horse being part of the justification.
For sure.
It was always, if I bought a horse at Fasig-Tipton or a sale, it would be based on the purchase price, or even a jumper based on the purchase price. So that's invaluable information.
Yeah,
for
I think a lot of people come to us and they're like, well, why is there so much paperwork to do, when I have to renew my insurance? And, really, I tell them, we're doing the homework beforehand. So if you do have an issue or there is a problem somewhere down the road during that policy, we're not backtracking. We've already put in the necessary work so that if you have a claim, or you have, God forbid, a mortality claim, you've already done your homework. There's not going to be any discrepancy on that animal's value at that time.
That actually works both ways. That helps you as the company and the underwriter, and then it also helps the owner.
Correct.
It keeps both of you on that.
Yeah,
on that page.
for sure.
There's none of this. No. My horse was really worth this, or those issues are already pre-handled, best value for both.
Yeah, no, and it's, I always tell people, I can be your best friend, when you need me to be, but at the other the other end of the string, you might not like me sometimes because I'm going to make you do things that you might not want to do, but it's really for your own good.
Right. Right.
Again, I always tell people my job is to make you think worst case scenario. Because if you do if you do encounter that worst case scenario, the last thing you want to be doing is backtracking and shuffling through paperwork and worrying, oh my God, am I going to get my claim paid? That you've put in the effort, you've put in the work ahead of time, so that if it does happen, you're not treading water.
Are certain mortality claims denied? Is there a percentage on the paid and denied?
I mean, in terms of a percentage, I'm not exactly quite sure what that number is, but I always tell people, pre-existing conditions really are the hang-up. But really, if you, I always try to say too, I've got a lot of sayings I feel like I'm coming up with, but
we're writing them down.
All right, you should write
This is a good place to say that.
No, but I always tell people, really, what you need to do is, when it comes to pre-existing conditions, work with the system as opposed to against it, because the system always wins. And when I say that, I mean, if you have had for instance, if you had a horse that had colic surgery, they can be eligible for coverage, if they go a year without any incidences. Granted, if they have resections, if they have literally their organs cut into, then you're not going to be eligible for colic surgery. Again, in this example, again, it's just the rule. But if you just have, if it's a medically treated colic, for instance, you can be eligible for coverage after a certain amount of time has gone by without any reoccurrences or relapses of that specific condition, or even lameness issues. If you've had an issue, a suspensory issue, for instance, seems to be I call it the nudicula. It's the probably the most common, one of the most common lameness issues that we see. Same thing, if you're, as long as there's no surgery or actual procedures, you can be eligible for coverage again, based on your veterinarian's recommendation and a clean veterinary report certificate. So again, it's working with the system as opposed to around it. You can choose to ignore issues, but if you have a claim, it's going to come up. It will come up, and you will be denied on a claim. That's why you need to be able, again, to work through the system and not against it.
Do you have owners that choose to insure for major medical but not mortality?
You can't do that, actually. You have to have mortality insurance in order to be eligible for they're very privy to that. Because of the fact that, and if to go into some very brief numbers, the vast majority of medical claims, well over 100%, are medical claims. Additionally, the mortality premiums, there's two separate, really, when you have a horse insurance policy, there's two portions of it. There's the mortality, and then there's the medical, and both complement one another. You have to have mortality in order to have medical, but the claims on the medical end are so high, the ratio is so high, that traditionally, are really pretty much all along, the mortality premiums have subsidized the medical losses. So if they just sold strictly medical policies, they'd be out of business pretty quick.
Right.
It's interesting that we're talking existing conditions and all of these things. How deep would your policy go? In other words, down to what procedures? Where would be a cutoff be, like on preventive stuff, like a veterinarian call for vaccinations and things? Where is that cutoff line that you do not do this, or are there deductibles? Enlighten me on
Sure,
that.
there is deductibles for medical claims. With one of the main carriers that we deal with, Starnet Insurance Company, their deductible, for instance, is $275. They've got 5 different limits of medical that you can choose from, anywhere from $5,000 up to $15,000. And again, there's a deductible that comes into play. Really, the major medical portion of insurance is really for the unforeseen, unexpected issues that might arise. It's not for the general maintenance, the routine vaccinations, anything like that. A lot of people ask us, how about joint injections? Well, joint injections are, again, routine maintenance. You're supposed to do them to keep your animal in the best condition to be able to do their job, to prevent an injury, really. And, I think a lot of people assume that they're going to have their joint injections covered. Well, again, it's a routine maintenance. It's like changing your tires in your car. You're supposed to change your tires in your car every 30,000 miles. Well, if you don't do that and you're driving down 87 and you blow out a tire because you've gone 60,000 miles or whatever it is, it's kind of your own fault. It's pretty much the same. That's kind of how I try to explain it to people.
Right. Something that just struck me kind of ironic, and it is called mortality insurance.
Mortality, yes.
Yet, if it's for a human, it's called life insurance.
Life insurance. It pretty much is the same thing.
It is the same thing.
Yeah.
But people don't like to talk about their own mortality, but they will about their horses.
They will about horses.
See,
they will.
See, I used to drive my insurance agent nuts because I called it death insurance. I said, "You're betting I'm going to live, and I'm telling you I'm going to die someday." But anyway, that's all.
Yes.
But it's really a fascinating topic. You have more questions?
Our guest is Brendan Tatro of Horseworks Insurance Specialist. Brendan's company is a sponsor of the Saratoga Springs Horse Show, so we thank you for
Yes, we do.
your sponsorship. It's an integral part of putting this event on. And yes, I do have some more insurance questions. We're having a fascinating discussion on premiums and policies. And one of the questions I have is, how are premiums calculated? Do they vary for the use and the age of the horse?
They do, actually. That's exactly how they calculate them. Discipline, what the animals are doing, what their job is essentially, whether they're hunter-jumpers or they're dressage horses or eventers or even pleasure horses, for instance, they have set rates. And then based on their age, really, overage rates do kick in at age, with some companies it's age 15, other companies it's age 16, and then the premiums start to go up because, again, they get older. The chances of having a loss are greater, kind of like people. But yeah, it's based on the discipline and what they're doing. So you really, they give you a set rate that you go by, and it's based on the value of that animal. And that's, you would calculate the mortality premium off of those rates and the value of the animal, and then the medical portion of the policy has a set rate. So if you have a $10,000 major medical or veterinary service package added onto your mortality, it's a set rate. Whether your horse is insured for $10,000 or $100,000, that medical premium is always going to be the same.
Can you give us any type of ballpark figures? For example, if a horse is valued at $100,000 at age 5 and then at age 16,
yeah, for sure.
What is the variance?
So for instance, one of the carriers that we deal with, Starnet Insurance Company, their rates, we call them underage rates, up to age 16. They insure hunter jumpers, since when in Rome, right?
Yeah.
They insure hunter jumpers at 3.6%, so it's $36 per thousand insured. So if you're doing a $100,000 horse, it's a $3,600 premium. If you wanted to do a major medical package on top of that, let's say at $10,000, I believe the premium is right around $450 or so. So I mean, at the end of the day, you're looking right around $4,000, give or take. And the thing about insurance rates is they're mandated by the state and really the federal government. So, there's a lot of different insurance carriers out there, but the rates tend to be in the same ballpark. I guess we'll say ballpark.
Yeah.
There's not a ton of variation in terms of pricing, and there's really not a ton of variation in terms of coverage. There are some specifics here and there, but they all tend to be, again, within that same realm, we'll say.
Do most owners maintain their horse's insurance through the point of mortality and a claim, or is it usually a partial point in the high point of that horse's career? How does
Well, I
that
think,
play
a lot
out?
of people that have, especially, again, show horses, for instance, if you want to, talk about it from that perspective, I think a lot of people keep their animals insured. You can insure them up to 20. They can be insured up to 20 years old. And most people that are showing, they have their animals covered. It's just it's a wise thing to do. And there are some people that don't. And to each his own, I guess, at that point. But I think a lot of people realize that these are significant investments. It's not a set of golf clubs or a tennis racket. They're pretty expensive, high maintenance animals, and they cost a lot of money. And really, I think most people, I think, that are on the show circuit, again, whether they're hunter, jumper people, dressage people, eventers, whatever, I feel like, I don't know if I can give you an exact percentage, but I think the vast majority of them have some form of insurance in place to protect them.
Do you see those policies, though, that they retire the policies, like when they retire the horse?
Yeah.
Say, I mean, we have a Grand Prix horse, he's worth $100,000
Yeah.
at the height of his career now, and then it's like, well, he's a little older, we're going to retire him.
Well, again,
Do
as the horses get older, the rates tick up. So, I
Yeah.
mean, you kind of have to figure out where's the best bang for your buck at that point. If the horse has given you X amount of years and has been a faithful servant, and you have to figure, okay, well, what's the best bang for my buck? What's the risk versus the reward? You almost have to figure out, do you allocate? And I always tell people, if you have horses that are getting older, and they might still be showing, well, maybe at one point in their career they were worth $100,000 and they're 18 years old. Well, that's an exorbitant premium insurance. I mean, that's a lot of money. So maybe instead of insuring them for that $100,000, maybe now they're worth 50. And I have this conversation a lot with people that are, they get their hard copy renewals in the mail, and they think, they'll call me up and say, this is very expensive, and I always try to give them some options. Well, here's how you can minimize the cost, but still be getting covered adequately.
I have a question comparing horse policies to car policies. If a horse is out of commission for a major medical issue, is something in there to allocate funds for a lease, like a rental car?
That'd be nice, actually.
That's a good question.
Maybe
I
a
like
new
that.
component you could add in.
It would be a good idea. No, there really isn't. I think really probably the closest thing to that would be loss of use. I would think. I mean, just trying to wing it. I mean, no. There is, I guess to answer your question along those lines, no, there's not, unfortunately. But there is a product called loss of use, which reimburses you. I believe it's 50% of the animal's value if the horse becomes unable to perform duty in that insurance policy. So, for instance, if you have a horse that is an equitation horse jumping the 3.6 and it sustains an injury and can no longer jump again, and let's say it's an expensive horse, let's say it's a $100,000 horse, if you have a loss of use claim, you will get back, again, only 50% of that horse's value. You'll get back $50,000, but it's a lot better than getting back nothing.
What basically does that type of premium run?
It's expensive. Yeah, so what they do is they calculate that on top of what your regular mortality and medical premium is. I always tell people the hardest part of it really, I think, is the cost. Because again, insurance it's not a tangible item. It's not like an ice cream cone that brings you that instant gratification. It's that promise. But loss of use, you take your insurance premium and you pretty much double it. So if you're paying, in that case we were talking about before, if you have a $100,000 horse with a $10,000 medical package, you're looking right around $4,000. To add on loss of use coverage, you're going to be looking probably around $7,000 in terms of a premium. So, we've got some clients that are absolutely, without question, would not go without it. Sleep better at night. And we also have others that really don't even give it a second thought. They don't think it's worth it. And I can see both ends of the spectrum. But it is a product that has come in handy for some people that just they've experienced the loss for an animal, and then they're back to square one, and it wasn't a euthanasia case.
Right. I have heard, with regard to loss of use, that to collect on the policy, the horse needs to be returned to the insurance company? Can you share some information on that? I have no facts. It's just been hearsay.
It was like that for a while. Most of the carriers now, you're allowed to keep the animal, and really, I think I don't know this for sure, but to make an educated guess about why that's the case and why it used to be different is because they were ending up with horses, and what do insurance companies want with horses?
Right. Right.
And I think a lot of people at one point, some carriers, I believe, they give you an option if you want to keep the horse or if you want to give the horse to the company. But I really think it's starting to swing towards the owner keeps the animal, end of it, because again, insurance companies aren't in the business of maintaining horses.
One of the things that's coming out here in my mind is you have a group of owners who not only are they owners and they're performing and they want to insure their horses for mortality and injury, but then you have a group of people who really have the experience in viewing the horse business as a business, and you have this group of people who I just talked about who view it as a business, but they love their horses and these things. And you are trying to take these people and force them to make business decisions, not decisions of the heart. And that's got to be one of your toughest things.
It is. You're absolutely right. I try to tell a lot of our customers and our clients, my job is to make you think numbers. We have to think numbers. And again, also the worst case scenario, because you do not want to be blindsided. But really, I think one of the hardest things that I have to do on a daily basis is really make people think from a business perspective. Detach yourself from the personal end of it. Get away from your feelings, so to speak. And just really, we have to think about it from a business owner's perspective or a horse person's perspective. Totally from the personal end. You really have to think of it commercially. Especially trainers and professionals.
Because I'm looking at it from the standpoint of I hung on to a couple of 30-year-olds, because I dearly loved them.
Yeah.
They were no longer insurable. I mean, everything had long run past. And I was very fortunate because I never had any major issues with those horses. But they were the last few years of their lives. They were just pets in the barn.
Yeah.
They were around and good. But it's really tough to make that business decision. If you got to make that decision on that horse, and if you're not in that business, if you haven't been in a business where you buy and sell and you make business decisions about it, that's tough.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I know exactly what you're saying. Unfortunately, I think the hardest part of my job at times is to deal with, or I shouldn't say deal with, that sounds like the wrong word, but to console, people that have had horses that had to be euthanized or that have died. And I mean, we really, I joke sometimes I think I'm a therapist because I do deal with those kinds of issues, and it's a really rough thing. I lost a horse in 2001 during, so I know what it's like personally, but I also have to deal with it on the professional end. And I think being able to empathize with people helps me do my job a lot better.
Maybe you need to devise a little policy out here that gives some kind of limited coverage, and it's called the indecision policy. And it gives you 3 months to come up with what you want to do, but in the meantime, you have some kind of limited stuff started, and you're in the indecisive period.
Yeah, no, a lot of our clients are a little indecisive, but I try to get them on the right track, thinking along the right lines.
Trying to give you another avenue.
I know.
You can sell another whole policy called the indecisive policy.
We could do the indecisive policy. We really could. I'll have to consult you on that one.
Our guest is Brendan Tatro. Brendan is a sponsor of the Saratoga Springs Horse Show through his company Works Insurance Specialist. We're having a conversation about premiums, policies, and the proper and practical way to insure your horses. Brendan, I have a question I'd like you to get to about liability for property owners, commercial horse stables, trainers individually, and professionals.
Yeah, I think really if we're going to talk strictly about liability, there's really two ends of the ship, we'll say. There's the personal end and then the commercial end. I think one of the biggest downfalls, we'll say, in the horse business nowadays is the lack of amateurs that aren't in it to make money, that don't have a personal liability coverage. A lot of people assume that their homeowner's insurance, the liability portion, will cover your horse exposure, and that isn't necessarily the case. And a lot of policies that we've looked over don't have coverage for any kind of equine exposure. So if you're showing and you've got 2 horses and you keep them at a commercial boarding facility and you are at a horse show and, God forbid, your horse causes bodily injury or property damage to somebody else, another party, you're on the hook for that. And again, a lot of homeowner policies don't carry, coverage doesn't extend over to the horse exposure, and a lot of people find that out the hard way.
Homeowner policies are, if there's any coverage at all about a horse in a pasture in your place or whatever, it's very, very limited. They're not designed for that.
For sure. And I think really the commercial end of it too, if we're going to go, to the complete other end of the spectrum here, the commercial issues that I think we see most often, again, our professionals like assume that they have everything that they need, and businesses are always changing, farms are always changing, trainers are always reworking their operations. Maybe they were not doing sales before and now they're selling horses, and they just assume that, okay, well, I've got what I need, and I have insurance, I've got liability insurance, that's going to cover everything I do, and that's not necessarily the case. If you're running clinics, if you're doing camps, if you're hosting shows, aren't covered under general liability insurance. You have to have endorsements added onto your policy to cover those specific events, and a lot of people just, again, automatically assume, a lot of professionals assume that they have coverage for these kinds of events and shows or whatever they might be, and that's not necessarily the case.
So it is very important, if you're a professional or a property owner, to be very specific.
Correct.
With your insurance agent.
Definitely.
With regard to your activities.
For sure.
I've been aware of cases where trainers had a student fall off with a bad injury, and it resulted in a multitude of legal actions that followed, to the property owner, to the leasing agent, to the trainer themselves, to the horse owner, if that's a separate
to everybody
entity.
in sight.
Yeah, it really is, and those can be very tricky issues, and unfortunately, I think, again, people find out the hard way, and that's why this is why you pay your premiums. This is why professionals, as much as they don't want to pay us, and they really think that we're being a pain in or a thorn in their side, I should say, if those kinds of issues arise, I mean, you can lose your business, you can lose your home. You really need to be adequately covered for the operations that you're partaking in, whether you own the farm or you're leasing the farm. There are some professionals that that we've encountered that are very lax about keeping their insurance up to keeping up to par, so to speak, and keeping their insurance current. And I think to myself sometimes, God, if the property owner only knew how bad they were slacking, because again, if something happens to someone on that property, and it's someone who's renting the property, and it's their customer, their client that falls off or gets hurt, the property owner is still they can still be held liable.
The only reason that they have peace of mind over that is because they do not realize how exposed they are.
Exactly. Yeah, unfortunately, I think insurance is one of those issues that a lot of people just don't necessarily, they don't understand it as much as maybe they should. And I think that's where we as agents come in handy, as we're able to kind of break it down. We're able to take the insurance language and break it down into the horse owner, professionals, amateurs, into their language, to help them understand really what it entails and what they need and maybe what they don't need.
And the rest of that is, and it comes back to the trust and belief in your agent, but it's to be able to say, okay, you tell me what I need, and you tell me how I need to write this policy.
For sure.
Because what I want to be able to do if something happens is I want to be able to say, Brendan, it's your baby. Here it is. This is what happened. You are now in the driver's seat. You told me this would cover all this. Now take care of it. Don't come back with the wells or the or this wasn't, or we didn't dot this I. I trust you to do it so that when something does happen, take care of it.
Yeah,
for
and,
me.
and again, I think that brings us back to the point we were talking about earlier, that we try to do our homework up front. We try to get it done ahead of time, so that if you do encounter an issue, again, you're not backpedaling. You're not trying to go through documents, and you have
Right.
everything ready and in place, and
you're forcing them to give that to you.
exactly.
Right.
And again, sometimes that's homework, as I say, but it's really important that they do that, so
Right.
that if they do encounter an issue, all the work has been done. It's been accomplished.
Well, the horse world is very fortunate to have someone with your
Thank you.
level of expertise and experience, boots on the ground,
Oh, yeah.
working
Right.
with horses to help out with intricate insurance details. It's a very, very nuanced field, and
Yeah, I think,
I can tell you, having horses for 40 years and having them insured, I don't believe I've ever heard half of what you shared here today.
I think we
It's-
try to
it's-
break it down, just to try to break it
Very,
down
very
into
informative.
ordinary language
Yeah.
is not an easy thing to do.
And you wouldn't buy your car insurance from a life insurance salesman or whatever.
Exactly.
So what you're doing here is, if you come to somebody that is horse savvy, that has been in the industry, like you are, then you can have a little peace of mind that somebody taking care of your needs knows what they're talking
Yeah.
about.
That's what we try, and we're specialists.
Yes, well named,
Well named,
appropriately named. And
Yes.
we're very grateful Horseworks Insurance Specialist is a sponsor of the Saratoga Springs Horse Show. Sponsorship is an integral part of putting this event on, run by the Capital Fund of Saratoga, who then in turn takes proceeds and distributes them to many Saratoga local charities to the tune of $81,000 just since 2012.
You just love that figure, don't you?
I think it's
know you
tremendous. It's a win-win-win
It is.
for every participant at every level,
Right.
from sponsors to the fund itself. The Capital Fund is an all-volunteer organization. It takes 40 to 50 volunteers to put this horse show on. They plan from this point forward to next year, so 2015 is in the works, in the minds of volunteers right now. So we're very, very